The planetary tipping points is something that we have talked about in this program before. In fact, Leo DiCaprio and I made a movie about it. If you go to if you go to YouTube.com and plug in Last Hours DiCaprio Hartman, you will find it. It's called Last Hours. And it's just a little 11-minute video about what happens when the ultimate tipping point gets crossed, which is where the methane crystals frozen on the seafloor, they're called methane hydrates or clathrates, when they start melting. This is what provoked the Permian mass extinction, the Great Dying, which killed 97% of all life on Earth 250 million years ago, or 249 million years ago. And now a report has been issued that from the University of Exeter in the UK. Tim Lenton, an Earth system scientist, is the lead author of the report. And it's about 26 tipping points in the report. Now, some of them are bad tipping points. Some of them are actually good tipping points. So it's not all, doom and gloom. But the report says humanity faces an unprecedented risk from tipping points that could unleash a domino effect of irreversible catastrophes across the planet. This is from reporting by Agence France-Presse. This is the most comprehensive assessment ever conducted of the Earth's invisible tripwires. It was released during the COP meeting. 5 of these 26 tipping points are showing signs of tipping. And once a tipping point, it's like a teeter-totter. I mean, once one side goes down, as the other side isn't coming back up again. They don't bounce back, and I guess with a teeter-totter it would, but what's a better analogy for a tipping point? A better analogy for a tipping point is a car coming to the edge of a cliff. And if it keeps on going, it goes off the edge of the cliff. That's the tipping point. There's no going back, right? Or if you want to go back, it's a lot of effort. So 5 of these tipping points are showing signs of hitting their critical masses, their tipping point points. They include melting ice sheets, which I saw in Antarctica a couple of weeks ago. There were large parts. We traveled on this ship to 5 or 6 different parts of Antarctica. We were in a couple of the islands around the edge of Antarctica, and then we were directly on the continent itself for 2 days. And areas that 30 years ago had been covered by glaciers are now beach, literally open beach. I have a picture of a seal on a beach, that would have been under 20 feet of ice, 1,000-year-old ice just a couple of decades ago. The penguins are struggling now in the Arctic summers, at Christmas time, around Christmas time, because it's hotter than they're adapted to. The chief scientist on this ship that I was on just was, laying out the science, and it was just shocking. So anyhow, number 1, melting ice sheets. Number 2, catastrophic sea level rise. Now that, of course, is the consequence of melting ice sheets, particularly the Antarctic ice sheets, which is what Louise and I saw when we were there, and the Greenland ice sheets, which I have not seen, but I would like to. Then there's the mass die-off of tropical coral reefs. This is another one. And these, coral reefs are carbon sinks. They're animals, but they build shells out of mostly calcium, but it's calcium carbonate. It's carbon and calcium. And so this is tough stuff. He said that these tipping points, Tim Lenton, the chief scientist, he said this represents a threat of a magnitude that is unprecedented for humanity. It also highlighted a range of positive tipping points, the tipping point of electric vehicles. In many European countries, in Norway, for example, you won't be able to buy a gasoline-powered car in another decade. In many of your European countries, you won't be able to buy a gasoline-powered car in 15 years. Here in the United States, the goal is far more modest, but electric cars are really picking up in popularity for good reason. They're just crazy fun to drive. The reason you have to have a transmission for a gasoline-powered car is that they have so little torque that, you know, you've got to go through the gears to amplify the torque of the engine. Whereas with an electric car, there's no transmission. You hit the gas pedal or the electric pedal, and that power goes to the engine, to the motor, and the motor just throws you forward. I mean, it's like being in a rocket ship. You know, a lot of these cars, you can go 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds or less. I think, Sean, you were telling me the other day, the new Tesla Y is 3.1 seconds, 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. I mean, it's like taking off at a jet. I mean, it's like, actually, it's faster than taking off at a commercial jet. So they're fun to drive. There's you know, way fewer moving parts. I saw a piece, which I thought was probably a hit piece from the fossil fuel industry the other day, suggesting that, you know, the electric cars aren't as reliable as gasoline-powered cars because there's, you know, these are brand new technologies, and some of these cars are having some bugs. You know, they're still working out the bugs. But hey, you know, I've got a car now that has a 100,000-mile warranty on everything, that never needs an oil change, that never needs a fluid change, that never needs lubrication. The only maintenance it requires is rotating the tires and updating the computerized system, you know, the software. That's it, as far as I know. And it's... So anyhow, that's happening. That's a tipping point. Renewable energy is a tipping point. Now, solar and wind are both, pretty much everywhere in the world, cheaper than any fossil fuel and way cheaper than nuclear. And then the third one is, and I thought this was fascinating that they identified this. I've been wanting to write an op-ed about this for months, and I've got it on my list, and one of these days I will get to it. But the third leading cause of climate change gases behind transportation and housing is industrial agriculture, principally animal agriculture. You know, Ronald Reagan made jokes about cow farts, but it's not a joke. The way that we raise animals for agriculture and the way that we raise edible crops to feed to animals for agriculture is it's the third largest contributor to global warming. And what's happening is people are realizing, first off, that that is the case, but probably more importantly, that if you eat a plant-based diet, I mean, I've been a vegetarian since 1966, I think, or 67. And I was a vegan for much of the last 20 years. I do now eat fish once a week at the most, maybe twice a month. That's my one, you know, because I think as humans, we are actually omnivores. I think we're designed to eat a little bit of animal food. But, you know, that's it for me. And I think I'm healthy. You know, I have all the indicators that I'm healthy. And people are discovering, you know, that a plant-based diet or a largely plant-based diet, for a lot of people, it just means meatless Mondays, you know, or meatless Monday, Tuesdays, or meatless Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or, you know, just eat a steak on Saturday or Friday or whatever. But cutting back on meat actually helps save the planet and extends your life. It reduces your risk of stroke. It reduces your risk of heart disease. It reduces your risk of diabetes, oddly enough. So anyhow, I thought this was a fascinating study. The other three tipping points that we are most at risk for are the melting permafrost and the ocean currents. And we've talked about this before, the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. You know, the great conveyor belt that brings heat to northern Europe. And if this thing shuts down, then we're going to see worldwide famine like we've never seen before, you know, in the history of the human race. There were over 200 researchers who participated in this 400-page study on global tipping points.